This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
And I thank you all very much for joining us here on this election night on The Express. A friend of mine wanted me to know the music that we use for the intro, and that's from Herb Alpert. It's called Highway 101. It reminds me of the days that I lived in California, and I used to ride on the Highway 101 up and down the coast, down to San Diego and points north. So it always brings back some fond memories, and I also happen to know Herb Alpert, so it's kind of a cool thing. And welcome to The Express, to all of you, excuse me. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us. We got a great guest tonight. I'll get to him in just a couple of minutes, Mr. Gary Began. But first, to remind you, if you want to follow me on Facebook, it's Gary Allen, A-L-A-N. If you want to listen to any of our past shows, go to youtube.com. Gary Allen, A-L-A-N, The Express Interviews. As I've explained, you're going to get the country guy at first. But what you need to do is just go down a little bit, and it'll always say, for those of you that have used YouTube before, it'll say, do you mean this person? Click on that, and it'll say Gary Allen, The Express Interviews. Thursday night, this program will repeat itself at 7 p.m. on Diversity Broadcast Network, our sister station, and it'll also be on progressivevoices.com by the end of the week. And EW, how else can people tune in to listen to our shows here on TMV?
Well, I love that you said tune in, because that is our wonderful device that we are a part of. TuneIn.com is our what we are a station of. You can just simply go to TuneIn.com and download the free app. Free is a great thing to have. And then put TMV Cafe as your favorite. You can listen to us with any of your smart devices, on the go, on the road, wherever you are. And while Gary's live on the air with his wonderful guests, you can listen to him anywhere.
Yeah, and I appreciate that very much, and thank you, EW. And before I get into tonight's guest, let me just say, first of all, this gentleman has been on with us before. He happens to be a very good friend of mine. We've become friends over the years. He's been very helpful to me in my career, advising me what to do, what not to do. The first thing that he advised me, of course, was, Gary, get out of radio completely. You really should go into retail. Gary Began has been in the broadcast industry for over 30 years. He has experience in programming, on-air promotions, branding, and consulting. He has a brand new book out called Radio Programming and Branding, the Ultimate Podcasting and Radio Branding Guide. We're going to get into his podcasting. We're going to talk about his radio career. He's been a program director here in Florida, as well as Saginaw, Michigan. Whoa, that had to be a cold place. Hagerstown, Maryland, as well as Waterville, Maine, I believe it is. ME is Maine, I think. I'm not sure. Might be Missouri for all I know, but nevertheless, Gary has a 30-year experience in this business. There's very little that you can get by him. He's a great gentleman altogether. Mr. Gary Began, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you so much, and I can see you took my advice. So
yes,
it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, absolutely. No, ME is Maine, by the way. So, yeah, Waterville, Maine is where I was at one point.
I always get confused. This is off subject here a little bit, but I always do sometimes get confused with the abbreviations for the states. Now, I've been to Maine many, many times. I used to travel up there with my uncle to little small towns in there where he would perform, and I love it. The people up there are so crazy, and I even said once in front of my mother to a woman from Maine, I said, "Oh, you're a maniac." My mother did not know that was the nickname for people from Maine, and I got scolded.
Yeah, that's right.
I got scolded for it. Quite interesting. Gary, you have been involved in the radio business, as I said, for well over 30 years. And I want to talk about, number one, what got you into this business? We're going to kind of talk about some of the layers that we talked about before, but what got you into the radio business to begin with all those many years ago? Who introduced you to it, and have you tracked them down and shot them yet?
Yeah, no, they're on my hit list, though. Listen, before I answer that for you, I got a shout out for you.
Sure,
you got
go
a
ahead.
listener. Yeah, you got a listener in Europe today. Or tonight. Yeah, her name's Kitty Cavey. She designed my website. She's a good friend of mine. Good friend. She's very, very good at screenplay writing. She's looking for a literary agent. Her email address is kitcavey, Kavey, @gmail.com. So anybody who wants to reach out, she's won some awards for screenplay writing, and anything you can do to help her out would be much appreciated.
Absolutely, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. Give her another plug at the end of the program.
I appreciate that, Gary. Thanks.
Oh, hey, listen, anything for you, my dear friend. After all, you're the one that told. Yeah, hey, listen, you're the one that told me, Gary. I really don't think I think Burger King is more in line for you than radio.
Go sell slick ties. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right out of the trunk of your car. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Become mobile. Yeah.
Yeah. Who introduced you to the radio business, or did you start out like a lot of us, just listening to it on the radio, or listening to the radio and saying that's where I want to go?
Well, it's a funny thing. I grew up listening to the radio, and I grew up listening to shortwave radio, and I used to collect what are called QSL cards. Those are verification cards that you've actually heard the station that you sent a report to. And I had 50 or 60 really good cards, one from Radio Australia, Radio Japan. I had antennas all over the house, outside. My father was real happy about that.
Yeah.
But I originally wanted to be a meteorologist. And yeah, I wanted to be a TV meteorologist, but I found out the first 2 years of meteorology school were all based on chemistry. Well, that wasn't going to happen. I never got past Algebra 2. So, yeah. So I decided to I was going to go into television. And the college I was going to go to, Graham Junior College in Boston, closed. They had accepted me, and then they closed. They lost their accreditation. Everybody pulled out.
Yeah.
So I said, well, you know what? Radio sounds good. So I applied to Dean College in Franklin, Mass., and was accepted there and just fell in love. It was the best thing that happened to me. It was probably destiny that it happened that way, Gary.
Yeah, it's very similar to me. Randy Thomas, who was on with us last week, we talked about some of our beginnings in South Florida in radio, and it wasn't where I originally wanted to go. As a matter of fact, television and radio were so far from my thoughts, but you know that's a discussion for another time. But I know how I got introduced to it. Let's talk a little bit. You've been in the business for well over 30 years. You know, they talk constantly about the death of AM and FM radio, or at least AM anyway, that it's dying, that the subject we're going to talk about in the second half of this program is what's killing AM radio. You know,
well, what's killing? I'll tell you what's killing AM radio is the audience. The audience is dying off. The audience that listens to AM radio, the average age is close to 70.
Yeah.
They only listen because they grew up with it. People don't go dial searching AM radio anymore. You don't hear much music on it. You can't get AM stereo even if you had it. There aren't many cars installed with AM stereo. So AMs tend to be a moot point. Unless you're a big AM like WBZ in Boston or KDKA in Pittsburgh or KYW in Philadelphia. Unless you're pushing 50,000 watts and you're billing like crazy, you know, these 1,000-watt stations, these mom and pops, they have a tough time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you know, I tell them, I have a couple clients that are AMs, and they say, what can we do? And I said, you know, if I were you, I'd be at the opening of an envelope. Every time something's going on in town, increase your visibility and cover it. You know, that's not something the FMs are doing. So be where the FMs aren't going to be. All they want to do is be music boxes anyway. Do something to serve your community, and you'll be better off.
Yeah. And I also think what's killing AM, although to tell you the truth, as you know, something that I'm not going to mention right now, but I will be making an announcement shortly. EW knows what I'm talking about. You know, I'm going to be doing some stuff with the station not too far from where I live at the moment. But I think what's also killing it has been the political stuff. I think people are tired of the hateful conversation and I know. Well,
and you hit it right on the head. How many times can you hear that the president's doing a lousy job and get a lot out of it? You know?
Yeah. You know, you hear everybody's opinion. Now, I know that Mr. Hannity just signed a major contract back with Beasley Broadcasting. But at the same time, Limbaugh, his contract is up with his people. And I know he's going to have to take a major cut in pay because, you know, they, for obvious reasons, they just don't want to hear it anymore. I mean, you can hear Kennedy and Limbaugh and Ingram and all the others say the same thing, Levin and
well, that's it. That's it. Mm-hmm.
But here's a question to you. If tomorrow morning you decided, or somebody said, Gary, I want you to come in and take my AM FM combo, which, by the way, one of the reasons why I think AM is also dying out is because of these major corporations buying all the stations, and now they're in financial difficulty because they've spread themselves too thin. But getting back to the premise of the question, somebody comes in tomorrow and says, Gary, I have an AM FM combo. We haven't been doing well. I want you to come in and turn this thing around for me. What are you going to do right off?
I'd start looking at the staff, seeing how strong they are. I would look at the programming on both sides of the issue. The AM is probably taking satellite programming. I'd get a couple of live guys in there to do local talk, local community service, do a local live morning show and a live afternoon show. You can't blame these guys too much because, if you're already operations and program director of 7 stations and the last one's an AM, which one do you think is going to suffer? Mm-hmm. It's going to be that AM, because it's just not drawing the audience or the cash flow the other stations are.
So what other connections, what other things do you want to do? I mean, sales, ID into the community, identification into the community.
Absolutely. Put some promotions together for the station that are unique, that are identifiable, that are something that the local community can get into. Some games, call your promotions department the fun and games department.
Do you think people a lot of stations are going back to that?
To play games. Well, they're starting to, Gary. They're starting to. People don't like sweepstakes. They don't like promotions, but they'll play games. So if you play games with people, you'll get a lot more out of them.
Mm-hmm. What about a format change?
Well, it depends on how well they're doing. If you're the fourth, I'll tell you something. Indianapolis just got its 4th country station. Wow. Now, what that's all about, I don't know. If it was Waco, I might see it, but Indianapolis just doesn't make sense.
No,
that's not exactly the country capital of the world here. But, there's a follow the leader mentality in this business, Gary. They don't do a lot of original stuff, and it's really hurting the medium.
Yeah. It's that way in a lot of different things in sports too. You see a trend going in Major League Baseball with the NFL, and everybody else follows it. The same thing in the news media. Let's talk though overall the state of radio in general, though. As I stated, one of the things that I think has been killing it off, of course, is the political syndicated type shows that are out there. Another thing I think that's killing it is the fact of the lack of local programming, which I think more and more stations are starting to say, hey, we need to have either a morning drive, afternoon drive, or a midday drive guy and an afternoon drive guy or something that relates to us. Because I can hear what's going on nationally, either on television or another way.
Or the internet. Or the internet. I get most of my news on the internet. And I get it faster there than I'm going to get it on TV or radio. Yeah. So, I think playing that card is ill-advised. You can play music on AM. Just do a lot of community service around it, Be at the opening of a store chain downtown. Be at the opening of a local restaurant. Do your morning show from a restaurant in the morning. That would be unique, and interview people in the restaurant.
Right. Even if it's a lost leader?
Absolutely. It gets you out there, it gets you known, and you become identifiable to the audience in the long run. So, yeah.
All right. Here's one for you, and one that I've never asked you, either off the air or otherwise. What's the biggest sin that a broadcaster can do, whether it's the owner who's on the air or one of the on-air people? What's the biggest sin that a station owner or a broadcaster can do to its listeners?
Oh, not serve them. Not do anything that's local, that's original, that's upbeat, that's creating a profitable resource for the station. putting something on your air that contains no value to the audience. That's
Right.
the biggest thing,
Right. Yeah. And I always thought boring shows, having on-air people that really don't have anything to say because it's Cousin Luke and he wanted a radio
Right.
show, I mean, that
Yeah,
bothers
yeah,
me.
yeah. Yeah, and a lot of programmers don't do air check sections. One of my best friends lives in Boston, and he works for WODS, which is a CBS-owned station. And he's been with them as long as I've been in radio, about 30 years. He's a production director there. And he hasn't had an air check session in 10 years. And that's Boston, okay? So, if you're in the 10th market in the United States and you're not taking care of your personalities, I don't know what's going on, because everybody needs a coach. Tiger Woods has one.
Yeah,
You
but
think
he
Tiger
hasn't
Woods
been.
needs-
Yeah, but he hasn't been doing so good lately, Tiger. He's.
No, but he still needs a coach. We all could use some coaching.
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
What do you think's going to happen with CBS? I mean, now that they've decided to either spin them off or sell them off, which they haven't really.
I think what they're going to do is spin off a couple stations. Les Moonves is not going to get the multiples through these stations in a bad economy that he thinks he's going to get. So I think what's going to end up happening is that they take on investors. They get rid of about 40% of their inventory, keep 60, and then they're happy. His argument was radio's not sexy anymore. And it's not, because everybody's doing the same damn thing, Gary.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can hear it. Gary Began, who is the author of Radio Programming and Branding, is our guest. Let's talk a little bit about the world of syndication. It came along about 15, 20 years ago. It kind of overtook the whole world. It was an easier, simpler, and less expensive way for these mega radio station corporations to supply their local stations with on-air people. But I see a trend of that going away little by little by little. It's eroding away, maybe because of podcasting, something we're going to talk about a little bit later on, or whether it's people are just getting tired of it. But I do see a point where syndication is not going to be this huge elephant in the room anymore like it has been for the last 20, 25 years.
Well, you've still got a lot of syndicated shows out there, a lot of them. One of the things it does do is it sharpens up your weekend programming. It makes you sound better than the local people you've got working there. So it gives you a professionalism that you wouldn't normally have, and it gives you something different to sell on the weekends. You can't ignore that. So it's a sales opportunity as well. I grew up listening to Casey Kasem, who had a show, American Top 40, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That was a great show. I mean, that was a big draw. There weren't a lot of syndicated shows back then. Now there's probably close to 100. So I think if you're a good show, you'll make it and stand out. There's a lot of shows that go by the wayside. Most of them are on barter. Some of them you have to pay for. Depends on your economic situation. But you don't see a lot of stations getting a lot of syndicated shows on the weekend. But, one or two can be very good for you.
Yeah. But I'm more or less referring to the syndications like the Limbaughs, the Hannitys, people like that have been the elephant in the room for a very long time. You're starting to see their shows shifting from the primary station in, say, Kansas City to maybe their secondary or third station in that cluster that's owned by iHeart or whoever. You think that has a great deal to do with the advertising dollar is not coming their way anymore like it was?
Well, it has a lot to do with economics. You're right. They're not pulling in the numbers on the big station, so they're going to write out their contract on a smaller entity in the group, okay? And that's a big hit to those shows. I mean, if you're Hannity or Rush Limbaugh did that in Boston, he went from WXKS, a 50,000-watt station to a 1,000-watt station in that market.
Yeah.
How do you think that worked for him?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think, and people have to pay for those shows. That's not cheap. So I think you're going to see the cost of those shows come down or go away.
Do you think the influences of the American people against people like Limbaugh for what he said over the last 15, 20 years and, Limbaugh, when he first got started, for those of you that are not familiar with it, and Gary and I both are, and some of you out there are, I'm sure, he was an entertainer. He was actually fun to listen to. He wasn't this bombastic kind of a guy who just hated everything that moved, and he criticized everything that was liberal, and liberals are lousy, and only conservatives are the way to go. Do you think that the letters and the complaints from different areas of our communities, you think that's had a major effect and will continue to do so when it comes to this stuff?
No. I think it's all about a buck. The rest is conversation. I think it's a lack of our advertising dollars. You've had advertisers pull away from those shows, and they have a hard time getting them replaced. So that's what's driving that. They don't have the pull audience-wise that they used to. So there is a lack of listenership there. There's a big sameness going on between those guys.
Right.
It's like talk radio in general. It's got a resurgence this year because it's an election year. But after that, it's going to go away again. It really is. What are you going to talk about? We're going to get to this in the second half of the show. But podcasting has gone past talk radio in terms of number of people listening.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and a lot of, in all fairness, a lot of radio stations do stream their shows on the internet as well as podcast some of their shows over. So we need to be fair on every kind of a level. But what I was getting at earlier with my question was the complaints have gone to the advertisers, and the advertisers are saying, wait a minute, these people are upset that Limbaugh said this, and they're going to pull away from us as purchasers of our stuff. And that's what I think is also killing people like Kennedy and Limbaugh, is that people are complaining. They're going to the advertisers, and they're pulling away from people like that because they say, hey, we can't lose our bread and butter, which is the people out there listening, are the people who are buying our products. We got to get away from these guys, I mean, as you can tell, Laura Ingraham is not on as many radio stations as she used to be. And
no, she blew it a couple of days ago with what she said on a live mic.
Oh,
she
yeah.
She said the F word. We're going to lose all these blankety-blank stations. Well, that hurt her,
Oh, yeah.
Credibility in broadcasting is everything. You're only as good as your last show. And Laura Ingraham, she's another nut, So the three of them together are a good circus. They should have one show together.
Oh, yeah. And put Ann Coulter in the middle talking about another nut.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
In your book, Chapter 26, Radio Programming and Branding, you say marry your listener. Marry your listener. What do you mean by marry your listener?
Get involved with your listener. Make sure that you're part of their life and part of their lifestyle. Because if you don't, they got no reason to go to you. You have to create desire. It's like podcasting. You're really, essentially, in podcasting, you're a content creator. Same thing in radio. You got to create the content that people are going to want to listen to, so that they'll listen, put you down in a diary, or listen to you so that a PPM meter can pick it up, and embrace that station so you can get higher ratings and more revenue. It's a win-win for you and the listener.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the more you reach out to your listener, I think the better off you are. And some of the old mom and pop tricks that we used to do when we got started in radio that we've discussed earlier in the program, I think still work. I don't think they're that hokey.
They do. Sure they do. No, they aren't hokey.
Oh, no. I think they're really, really great. Let's talk real quick while we have a few minutes here before we get into the second half of this program. Your on-air people are really the people that people hear the most. They only see the sales guy once in a while. They don't see the traffic person. So let's talk about on-air people. When you're putting together a station, what do you look for in an on-air person, whether it be talk or music radio? What are you looking for that will help drive that revenue stream for your product?
Entertainment value. What kind of entertainment value do they bring to the table? Are they funny? Are they creative? Is the guy a nut? Is this one of these guys that's going to create water cooler talk the next day in your place of business or at home? And that and integrity. Are they going to be there on time? Are they going to do what they say? Are they going to prep their show? Prepping your show is one of the big obstacles to doing a good show. You've got to prep your show. Because if you don't know what you go, the days of winging it are gone. Okay, so you've got to prep your show. You've got to be somebody that's committed to doing things for the station, whether it's a paid remote or an unpaid remote. You know, somebody that's a team player. You know, there's a lot of egos in this business, as you well know.
Oh yeah.
So,
you know, the biggest thing that used to drive me crazy, and you don't hear it anymore, and you're right, and it's all part of the preparation and understanding the subject matter which you're going to discuss, whether it's sports, talk, or music, or whatever the case may be, is obviously to know your audience. But I used to love these guys, these sports guys down in Miami where I grew up as a kid. And they were just ex-jocks that played for the Miami Dolphins or somewhere else they came from, and they got a job in radio. And somebody would have call up and say, hey, Bob, what do you think about so-and-so who plays for the New York Yankees? Well, I'll tell you what, Jimmy, why don't you tell me about him? Which means the guy doesn't have a clue what the kid's talking about.
Sure.
That used to drive me nuts. There was a guy who used to be a former tight end for the Miami Dolphins who used to do that all the time until he learned how to prepare. And it used to drive me nuts. And the guy was super intelligent, but, you know, it used to drive me nuts when you'd hear people like that or people coming on as your guest and they only could talk about one facet of whatever they were on there to talk about. It would drive me absolutely crazy. Gary, how many times in your career, besides telling me this, did you have to say to people, look, you know, you got it in your heart to be on the air, but you just don't have it. And there are a lot of other jobs behind the scenes. You know, no matter how hard you're trying, you just don't have what it takes to be on the air, to do the job, to be equipped, to have the skill sets to do that. I mean, is that heartbreaking for you to do that to someone? And has it been? I mean, for me, you know, it tore me apart. But, you know, I eventually gave up drinking because of it. But yeah. But I mean, have you had to do that much when you say, look, you're just not
a lot, but you know, when you're firing somebody, it's tough because, you know, that means you failed as an employer on a bad hire. Okay. So it's not so much the guy was bad. It was a bad hire and it was a bad situation both ways. You should have been sharper. You should have been clearer. You should have been more focused on what you were looking for. Rather, a lot of these guys look for somebody really fast. That's a detriment, really. Take your time. Take a couple, 3 weeks and run an ad in the trades and you know, look for people that are sincere and that, you know, are really what you're looking for in terms of talent. Because like you said, they represent the radio station to the consumer on the air. That's all the listeners know is what you've got out over the air. Right. So, I
mean that's it. But yeah, it's got to be tough. I mean, it really is. You send out your air check.
Oh, sure.
You know, sure. I remember someone who I knew very well in college. He sent out about 50 back then. In those days, folks, FM was just coming along. It hadn't even. It was just in its infancy. But I remember,
well, and a lot of FMs were simulcasting the AMs. So, you know,
yeah. So and he sent out
the FCC. Yeah, and the FCC mandated that they split in the top 100 or 200 markets. They had to split their programming. So that created a lot of jobs for a lot of guys.
Yeah. Do you think the FCC is going to take some of the rules back and say you can't own as many stations in a particular city or cluster that you currently own?
No, I think that's once you hit the limit, I think they're not going to allow it anyway. They're going to make you sell what you got to sell to loosen it up. But you've got two giant corporations there. You got Cumulus, who's iHeart. iHeart's almost bankrupt. They're going to go bankrupt anyway. They got almost $21 billion in debt. That's right. More than a lot of third world countries. And you got Cumulus, and they've overextended themselves to the point of almost going under. And they've overstated themselves time and time again, but what they're going to do and how they're going to come back. And, they just haven't done it. These large corporations, they got homogenized programming, past your eyes. How entertaining is that to listen to? You can't find any real entertainment anymore on the radio. No. It's really disheartening.
Yeah, it's the same old stuff, and it's the same old songs, and it's the same old
sure.
whatever. I mean, it's just there. All right, let's shift on over to the area in which you have we've been sort of talking about. And of course, for those of you out there, if you want to learn more about Gary, go to soundadvantagemedia.com. Also, pick up his book, would you please? Radio Programming and Branding, the Ultimate Podcasting and Radio Branding Guide. Gary Began is my guest, and he's also a very dear friend of mine who's been very helpful to me over the years.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
By
the way, the book is available on Amazon.com, so people can find it there. Yeah.
Okay. I know that podcasting is an area that everybody would like to know and talk about. You sent out earlier a blurb today, and I copied it down, at 57 million listeners a month on podcasting. I don't know how how is podcasting? I'm have difficulty how to phrase this. There are a lot of podcasting shows out there, but a lot of them are just Mike and Jim shooting the bull and not really taking it very serious, like this show and many of the shows that we have on TMV and other podcast networks. I mean, like Podcast One and other areas that I deal with, Progressive Voices, et cetera, et cetera. What does someone need if they come to you? And I want them to come to you because you can help them a great deal with their podcasting. You can get a hold of them at soundadvantagemedia.com. Please go there. What is it that they need to understand? Someone out there saying, I want to be a podcaster. What do they need to know to get involved in this? And what do you look for someone to really encourage to move forward?
What's your content going to be?
Okay.
What is your niche? What do you have to come off as an expert in something. You can't just, like I said, you can't just wing it anymore. Guy shooting the bull on a podcast. Who the hell cares about that? That's just two guys shooting the breeze. That's not going to last. You want something that people are going to value. There's going to be value to the listener. It's an on-demand service. So even if it's free, okay, let's assume it's free. It's got to be something of value that people are going to want to embrace. Mm-hmm. Same thing for advertising. You've got to have something that's going to embrace with the advertiser so that they want to advertise on your show.
Right. But let's
Content's king, because you're a content generator in a podcast situation.
Mm-hmm. What's the cost initially to get going?
Well, it can be very low. If they come to me and they want advice and they want to get started, it's $4.95 for the month. Okay, right. And I go through the entire process with them. I hold their hand. I'll help them get started. We'll find their niche. We'll format the show for them. I'll do the voicing for the show, the intros, the outros, the stuff that they'll need, and find out what they're good at content-wise. Not everybody is good at something they pick out. Maybe it's something else. You know what I'm saying? That's the fault of a lot of podcasters is they love something, but they're not good at expressing it. Okay.
Right.
You got to have the chops, and you got to have the ability to express what you're really passionate about, because people like that, and they'll go after that kind of presentation.
Yeah. You see more and more of the famous radio personalities, whether it be music or whether it be talk or sports, are going to podcasting. How far out do you see this going? I mean, is it the ceiling unlimited on this?
Oh, absolutely. It's infinitesimal. It's 57 million people listening to a podcast. That's a hell of a lot of people. That's more people than listen to talk radio. So that's a lot of growth. And then 2016 is supposed to be the year of the podcast. I believe it because it's a great service for people that are content driven. Okay. And you can listen to it anytime you want. You don't have to listen like the radio. You kind of have to listen to the radio at the same time. Okay. You don't have to do that with a podcast. You pick the time and day you want to listen to it. You listen to it at your convenience. I think where radio goes bad in podcasting is they're just rehashing their whole day's programming. If you did it in bits and pieces of your morning show, what were your best bits? Put them on a podcast. Don't do the whole morning show. people wanted to hear that, they'll listen to the morning show.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll generate interest, and you'll generate ratings for the podcast as well as your morning show.
Mm. Do you think that podcasting, though, has a dangerous spot? And let me explain that. You know, we go on the World Wide Web, and you and I have talked about this before, and EW and I have talked about this before, and everybody who's listening is well aware of this, that there's a lot of lies and misinformation and I mean, all you got to do is go on Facebook every once in a while, and you'll see that somebody has been proclaimed dead today, but they've been dead for the last 15 years, or a political viewpoint. Do you think podcasting has a danger of that, and of you know, bent opinions that are untrue, out and out lies, whatever you want to call it?
That can happen on radio. So, you know, you can't worry about that. All you've got to do is brand your content in a way that people are going to want to embrace it. You know, people can tell BS a mile away. If you're a specialist in your field and you're getting good guests, they don't have to be Rock Hudson or well, not Rock Hudson, but you know what I'm saying, big stars.
If you got Rock Hudson, boy, I want to know about it.
Yeah, I hear you.
No, but I know what you're saying. You have to have credibility.
Yeah.
You have to have credibility.
Absolutely. You got to have the credibility. Yeah.
You know, and it's like I have some loyal listeners. Randy out there, I know, is listening in. I let him know about tonight's show. You think the FCC is going to come down with some rules on podcasting the way they did for terrestrial radio?
Nope. I think there's enough people out there that don't want that kind of interference by government that you'll never see it. I could be wrong, but I just don't see it happening. It's not broadcasting anyway. What do they care? You know? So
I mean, because the reason I'm saying is because there is rumors that the FCC is looking at it and saying, you know, maybe we need to regulate something here to kind of keep everybody in the right pattern.
Well, that's the government. They like to regulate, period. You know, they can't keep their hands off anything. But I think when it's all said and done, you're not going to see it happen. What
are some of the advantages about podcasting? The mere fact that you can get it on your, it's at your fingertips at all times.
Well, that's because of Wi-Fi. You know, because Wi-Fi makes it portable, and it gives you a portability. It gives you the same portability as a radio, so you're at par with that. That's a great thing. You know, that's very powerful. So that's one of the big reasons podcasting has become so popular. You know, if you're a craft beer maker, you can get on there and do a show.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
You're not going to do that on radio. You know.
No, not unless you're buying time at a radio station or something. Then you can.
It's going to cost you a lot of money. Yeah, and the accessibility from smartphones. Everybody's got a smartphone today. You know, so it was smart to put podcasts on smartphones. You know, it's readily available on tablets. You know, you're a swipe away from listening to your favorite podcast and, watching to see if they've released a new episode. You know, it provides an opportunity for an intimate connection. Podcasts allow for connections that are nothing short of intimate. Audio connects us in a way the written word cannot. And, people like that.
Yeah. I think more and more people listen than read. I mean, the reading aspect of someone's life is really gone down. Now, without giving away the farm here, someone comes to you tomorrow and they want your advice, they want your services. What are some of the things that you go through in case there's a listener out there or two that is thinking about getting into podcasting? What do you do to qualify them that you're not wasting your time and you're not wasting their money? Okay.
I just want to say up front that I'm available for one-on-one consulting to help you launch or improve your podcast. So you can be a podcast already on the air and if you think you're in trouble, you can come to me. We can figure it out together. There are 4 main areas that I go over with anybody that wants to start a podcast. Content, because you're a content creator in essence. Whether you create or curate your content, it needs to be something people actually want to consume. Okay. Then there's presentation. You have the best content in the world, but if your podcast struggles because the presentation's lousy, that content doesn't go over well. You're not going to have a lot of listeners. So you got to be a good communicator. We go over that. Production values, which I help with, both audio and video podcasts should focus on sound quality, camera quality. Can you hear the podcast? Well, if you've got a strain to hear a podcast, there's a problem.
Right.
Don't stop with a high quality production with just your episodes. Ensure that you have a great looking website to cover it, because hopefully people are going to go to your website first to look for your podcast. And then finally, promotion. You can have a great podcast, but if you got no audience, what good is it? So we offer a lot of branding and promotion tips on how to get started and how to promote the darn thing and get some listeners and some advertisers. Because with that followership, you can gain advertisers. It was just released today that Nielsen rating system is going to start rating podcasts. So that's a good thing. That'll be great for trying to get subscribers, people that want to pay for a podcast. They'll track that, and they'll track audience reaction so you can get advertising. So
how expensive is it, besides what you charge for someone to actually get involved in it? I mean, it can be very inexpensive.
You can do it for $100, $150 and be in it and do a good job with it. If you get a decent mic, I would get 2 mics, because if you want to do an interview, you're going to want to have another mic for the interviewee. Get 2 mics, get a small audio board. If it's a analog podcast, you can get that for $50, $60, $70. And then you some sound stuff, sound audio recording equipment. I got mine for $100. SoundForge from Sony. Right.
So, and by the way, thank you so much for putting me on your website. I appreciate that very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for the testimonial. I appreciate that.
Well,
that was my pleasure.
Yeah, hey, listen, I appreciate that very much. All the things that you've done for me and helping me get along and all that craziness. You say, and you've repeated this a number of times, and you talk about it in your book in chapter 49 about getting passionate with your listeners. And that not only goes for radio, it goes for podcasting. And frankly, I think that would go well even if you're an insurance salesman. You have to be passionate with the people you're dealing with. And I think that the more and more you find people that are just going through the motions, and talk about that a little bit, getting passionate with your listeners.
Well, you got to get somebody that really knows what they're talking about, that has some credibility, because that builds a good interview, builds credibility right away. And people recognize that. Hey, gee, this is a guy that's a good interviewer. He really is good at getting people to get a lot out of them. Come out of their shell. You got to find the niche that people want to hear. Okay. It's something that you enjoy and something about, and you think you can share it with an audience. That's the essence of a good podcast right there.
Yeah. And also too, I think that getting out into the field and getting to meet people and letting people know that you're genuine. And by the way, you can't do that phony, because the minute you put on the passion and it sounds phony, you've already defeated your purpose before you've even gotten out of the gate. Because people out there can hear phony a mile away. I mean, they've heard it they've heard it from politicians for years, so they recognize it right away. And
if I want to listen to phony, I'll listen to a Donald Trump interview. Okay.
Please.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure right now he's giving his speech for winning
acceptance
tonight.
speech. I just looked on the internet, and he's won in all 5 states. So.
Yeah, and apparently she's won four of the 5. She's won, but
Bernie Sanders won in Rhode Island tonight. That was interesting.
But he's so far behind at this point. And by the way, this is off subject a little bit, but the fact that Trump's people have said they want to make him sound more presidential now. I think when he's backed into a corner, he goes back to being that scrappy little badger that comes out fighting and swinging. And I don't think he can ever get away from that. A leopard doesn't change his spots very often. So,
well, that's it. And then he's going to be interviewed by Megan Fox next month. And if you can't, if you're that small-minded that it bothers you to be interviewed by Megan Fox, what are you going to do when you're talking to Putin? You know, you got to stop being that thin-skinned. You know, that's tough enough.
Yeah. Getting back to the podcasting, what can someone do? And I know this is an area where you're going to help someone, but how does someone in podcasting and in radio stay ahead of the field? How do you stay away from everybody else in your competition? How do you beat the competition?
It doesn't matter. You're going to find people that are doing what you're doing, but they don't bring your they don't bring your voice, they don't bring your guests, and they don't bring your spin on what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So different people resonate with different voices. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Right. But I mean, what are some of the things that people can do? I mean, we're talking about, you just said, what is it in Indianapolis? The 4th country station is going to be there. So what's the 4th country station going to do that the other 3 aren't doing? Because country music is country music, unless you're talking about faith-based country music or old-time gospel or something. I mean, what are they going to do as the 4th station that the other 3 aren't doing?
I have no idea. You know what? You're asking a good question, and I wish I had the answer. I don't know what 4 country stations are going to do to stay alive. Yeah. There's not that kind of an audience. I could see 2 stations, a general country station and then maybe a classic country. Mm-hmm. But 4 country stations in Indianapolis, how the hell are you going to survive? I don't know how you're going to survive. I really don't. I think 2 of them are going to have to change format after a while.
Here's a funny thing. You live in Tennessee, and everybody assumes that Nashville is the home of country music. But when you go to Nashville, it's there, and they're there, the country people. But it's not country music that runs Tennessee. It's regular. It's top 40 music, classical music.
Top 40 and adult contemporary. Yeah. That's the number 1 format in Nashville. So
what is the number 1 format throughout the country when it comes to music radio?
Country.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got over 2,000 stations doing country right now. So that's a lot of people. That's a lot of stations.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I would have assumed maybe top 40 or even
top 40. Top 40 has lost a lot of stations because it's a tough sell. You're going after 18 to 24 or 30-year-old people. They don't have any money. Mm-hmm. And so advertisers are shying away from it. They don't really want it. So it's a tough sell nationally for radio stations. Even if you got good ratings, it's a tough sell.
Right.
So,
wow. And that's probably why there's so much. Let me ask you this. There are a lot of places for a podcaster to go, but when he or she is initially getting started, where are they going to go to place their show? I mean, they just can't.
There's several places you can go and do it for free. Right. You kind of get what you pay for. Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to, you could go to podbean.com. They got a good service. They'll give you an RSS feed, which is short for really simple syndication. And make sure you get out there. Buzzsprout.com. Mm-hmm. Podcastgarden.com, Hipcast.com. Those are just some of the places that will give you a good hosting site for free.
Yeah,
and then as you grow, then you move to somebody that's got more room in their server, and that can really help promote your situation.
Right, right. Do people, when they come to you and they talk to you about podcasting, do they understand that first and foremost, they're actually going to be a one-man band, that everything is really going to be relied on by themselves
No, they
unless
don't.
they can.
No,
Yeah,
no, they don't.
You know,
Yeah. No, they don't. And they think, it's like listening to the radio. And it's not. You've got to create your own content. So you got to do a lot of writing. You've got to read. I think really to be successful in podcasting, you got to be a good reader. You got to be voracious and read newspapers, magazines, anything you can get your hands on. Read and write down your thoughts so that you can follow the podcast in a logical order, and make sure the questions you ask are pretty much written down, especially if you're starting out.
Mm-hmm. I still do.
Do you?
Yeah, no.
I think it's a good idea. It's a good idea. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
nothing wrong with that.
If I'm interviewing a friend of mine who I see on a daily basis, I don't have to write as many questions down. But if I'm interviewing you, I want to make sure that I'm covering all the material. But what I mean is by all this is, do they realize they're their own PR department, their own marketing department, their own research department, unless they can afford to pay somebody to do that for them? I mean, like you said, they don't realize it.
Yeah, they realize it after I get done with them. So, you know, coming to me solves a lot of that problem because I can eliminate that for them. That's what the fee is incurred for, you know.
Right.
I think it's pretty reasonable in this day and age. I know guys out there that are getting $300 an hour for that kind of service.
Right.
That's a lot of money. I'm charging $4.95 for the whole month, you know.
And believe me, folks, you do learn a great deal from this man. Now, he was kind enough to give me some free advice there for a while, and that has helped me a great deal. And I'm always encouraging people to get a hold of you to talk. Every time you get something on Facebook, I send it out at soundadvantagemedia.com, Gary Began, and he has been in the business for over 30 years, and he always does a great job with you, and he will hit you right between the eyes with it. Have you ever turned down anybody, I mean, who's come to you and you just said, no, I'm sorry, you just don't have what it is to be a podcaster?
No, not because they don't have what it is, but because they're picking the wrong subject to be in a podcast situation that I don't think is a growth area. If you're just, all you want to do is talk about local sports. Well, okay, locally, that's fine, but, what kind of a reach are you going to have doing local sports? And if that's all you want to talk about, go buy some time on a radio station and do it. But a podcast is wasting your time, wasting your money. You gotta do something that's got a national reach that people are going to want to embrace and have an interest in.
Yeah, because I would imagine, I don't know this for a fact because we haven't talked about that, but I would imagine most guys that come to you, that's what they want to talk about, sports or automobile mechanics.
Auto is fine. If you're going to talk about classic cars, that's a good subject. If you're going to talk about the current state of new cars, something like that. But if you're just going to talk cars for the sake of cars, I think that's kind of a dead issue. Yeah,
there's a number of shows. I've caught them on Saturday morning where people call in and at a radio station and they tell them what's wrong with their car. I think that's a great format.
Absolutely, sure.
And then there's Cigar Dave, who talks about cigars and wine and everything.
That's right.
He's out of Tampa. So I mean, you really do have to pick. You have to pick your niche. You have to find that thing you want to talk about. When I started doing this, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go the political bent or what. And I always have admired Charlie Rose. And I said, he's
a great interviewer. He really is.
And I said, that's the kind of show I want to do, an eclectic kind of a show. Now, you are the fourth in a 5-week program on show business. We have one more to go next week, and my guest next week is going to blow people's minds, and I'll wait till next week to let everybody know. But, and some great guests coming up this fall. But I wanted to do something that was eclectic, that was different, that wasn't just all sports or all politics, because frankly – I love sports. I like politics very much. I was involved in the political arena, but I wanted to get something that I felt comfortable doing. Because I know I can do the other stuff. I know I can do talk radio, unlike talk radio where they have, on terrestrial radio, there's a commercial every 10 minutes, a commercial break, and then there's news and at the top and the bottom of the hour. I have an hour to really investigate what's going on with Gary or other guests that I have about what it is you want to do. And we talk about that. And I knew that's what I wanted. So, I mean, is that the kind of stuff you impress upon people that, you better be sharp at what you want and better have an understanding, because people aren't going to follow you if you sound not credible at all.
Well, yeah. And in terms of advertising, if you're doing an hour show, I would, if you're going after advertisers, I would have 2 or 3 commercials max. Don't have one at the top of the show. Let people get interested in it. Just do a tease. Say, by the way, the Express this hour today is being brought to you by Budweiser, the King of Beers. Mm-hmm. And then play it around 15 after. Play it around your quarter hour. Right. Play a 30-second spot, because 60s are pretty much gone today. So just do a 30. Come back to the show, and then do one about quarter of the hour. And then do a close. By the way, today's show is sponsored by Budweiser, the King of Beers. We want to thank them. People will listen to that. They don't want to listen to 8 minutes or 9 or 10 or 11 minutes of commercials. If they want that, they can listen to AM radio. Mm-hmm. But having a couple or 3 is great. It gives some income to you, and people will listen to it, especially if it goes along with the week's topic.
Mm-hmm. When you got started in this business, who gave you the best advice that you carry with you today that you pass on to others?
Well, I do a lot of voiceover work, as you know. Yeah. And my old friend, and he's still a dear friend of mine, Steve Bianchi, he told me he was the first PD that hired me, and I keep telling him about that and telling him what a tragic error he made. But we all make mistakes in life. But he told me to read everything you've got out loud.
Yeah.
Practice reading. And that was great advice, because it teaches you breath control. It teaches you longevity. It teaches you how to read and how to enunciate, because nobody can enunciate anymore. It's terrible. Yeah. So that was the best advice I ever got.
It's amazing. Speaking of enunciation, do you know that I was reading an article, it was online, and then I also had heard this before, that 45 to 50% of all broadcasters in all media either come from or have spent a large amount of their career in Pennsylvania?
No kidding.
And I once said to somebody, why? And they said, well, and the article said, and that most Pennsylvanians do not have an accent. And I said, well, you've never been to Western Pennsylvania, and you've certainly never been to Philadelphia in the inner city, because it's all over the place. But a lot of Pennsylvanians, like myself, I'm originally from the Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area. I don't think
I used to be in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
I don't think
you don't have an accent. You really don't.
And I know that I enunciate probably better than most, because I worked at it. I did like you. The best advice I ever got was read, and don't stop reading until the day you die. And that's true, right. Whether it's on the internet or whether I'm reading a book, I read constantly. I'm a lousy speller, but I read.
Well, thank God for spell check. That's how I wrote the book.
Yeah. Absolutely. And hope that you're able to discern the difference there. We've got a couple of minutes left, Gary. Talk about your podcasting, what you want to do for people, how they get a hold of you, and how far you can take them if they have what it takes to get going in the podcast business.
Well, we'll talk on the phone. They'll tell me their passion, their niche or niche, what they really think they're good at. If I think it's a good idea for a national show, and they've got the ability and they've got the talent, we go to the second area. And we start putting it together for them. It's not just me. I've got a small staff of a couple, 3 people that I rely on for advice and answering questions I might have. So it's really a consortium of people. So you're not just getting me; you're getting others. Mm-hmm. My biggest advice to anybody starting a podcast is don't place material on your podcast that contains no value to your audience. Okay, if you're going to do a podcast about cigars and then you want to talk about classic cars, you're going to lose them. Pick a subject and stay with it. If they want to contact me, you can email me at gbegin, BEGIN, at soundadvantagemedia.com, or call me at area code 731-437-0536.
That's
and my website, 731-437-0536, or you can go right to the website, soundadvantagemedia.com.
And I'll tell you what, you'll be glad you did when you go there. Gary is one of the most straightforward, honest people I know. He's been very, very good to me. And Gary, our hour is just about up, so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time out of your day to join us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much, Gary.
Mr. Gary Began, who is the author of Radio Programming and Branding. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us here on The Express. Don't forget Facebook, Gary Allen, youtube.com, Gary Allen, The Express Interviews. Thursday night, this program will repeat itself on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com at 7 p.m., as well as progressivevoices.com, tunein.com if you're running around the country, and just clock into tmvcafe.com. And until next week, and you will really love my guest next week, so please tune in, tell your friends. Until next week, this is Gary Allen saying, please take care of yourselves and each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.